Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 249. Mount Longxiu, Truth of the Matter. When Mo Ran woke up the next day, he didn't remember clearly what happened after he got drunk. But even if he didn't remember, Chu Wanning did. After that day, he made a few insinuations and confirmed that Mo Ran really did lose some of his memories of the past. This made Chu Wanning more and more uneasy. He spent a long time trying to find out about the spell he discovered and finally found information about this array in a medical cultivation book kept in the library of Shi Shengpeak. Light shone in from the window, 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred. His fingertips rubbed the dark lines on the book, then Chu Wanning took out the spell drawn by the little dragon. When he compared the two, the sigils were almost the same. It was a black heart. At first glance, it was easy to mistake it with the love spell as their sigils had the same sesame-sized blank space on the side of the heart. However, the love spell had the blank space to the left while this one was on the right. The talisman traces shown by the little dragon corresponded to the effect of the spell, so it seemed that this was a flower spell similar to the love spell, but with the opposite effect. In the empty library, the ancient scripture was mixed with ancient demonic characters, so it wasn't easy to understand. Although Chu Wanning had dabbled in demonic characters, it still seemed very difficult for him to comprehend this. He read slowly, character by character. Each time he understood a sentence, the astonishment in his heart increased. 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower, demonic seed. Chu Wanning's thin, watery lips opened slightly and said in a low voice, "Legend has it that thousands of years ago, Goshen the Exalted brought it from the demon realm into the human world. On the book, there was a strange-looking seed. Next to it was a drop of blood and a thin wisp of smoke. This demonic flower was extremely difficult to cultivate. It needs to be watered with demonic blood for 10 years and then infused with a wisp of the owner's soul before it can sprout and bloom." Chu Wanning muttered, "It needs demonic blood and the owner's soul to grow. But in this world, there are no more pure-blooded demons." But the records might not be completely correct, so there was no need to delve on this point further. He continued to read, only to see a heart drawn on the silk book. On the right side of the heart, there was a double-petal flower in full bloom. Next to the illustration, there was a passage of complex demonic words. "This demonic flower cannot be nurtured by the earth nor nurtured by water, it cannot be seen by the sky nor by the earth, only the human heart can." Chu Wanning was shocked. This was a flower that could only grow in the heart? Reading further down, he got even more shocked. What was written on the records was that once the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower was planted in someone's heart, they would go through 3 stages. In the first stage, the host will not exhibit any changes. The only difference was that the host would gradually become irritable and prone to maliciously speculation about others. Furthermore, the host would gradually forget some of their good memories. At this stage, although the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower was difficult to remove, as long as it was discovered in time, its effects could be slowly suppressed. If the situation is right, the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower would eventually go into hibernation and it would be difficult for it to take effect again. But if it was not discovered by this time, then depending on the host's situation, the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower would grow to the second stage after 8 to 10 years. At this stage, the host would begin to rapidly forget all the positive memories related to kindness, gentleness, and hope. Instead, he would repeatedly recall the frustrations, hardships, malice, and violence he suffered in his life. Life's 8 sufferings: birth, old age, sickness, death, resentment, love, separation, and the 5 yin flames, ignorance, ego, attachment, aversion, and fear of death, would all be engraved in the host's mind, deep into the host's marrow. When Chu Wanning read up to this point, his face was already as white as snow. Mo Ran, wasn't that the case with him? He had forgotten the wishes of his youth, forgotten the letters he had written, and even the memory of his own mother was not as clear as before. He continued to read. At the third stage, the host would become bloodthirsty, violent, and irrational. They would take revenge for the sufferings they had suffered in the past 1,000 times over. Chu Wanning seemed to recall Mo Ran's sinister smile during the bloodbath at the Rufeng sect. One of his hands was filled with spiritual power and the other was fiercely pierced into a cultivator's body. His fingers were covered in blood. He forcibly pulled out the spiritual core of that cultivator and crushed it. Many people cried and begged for mercy. The ground was littered with corpses, but Mo Ran only laughed loudly. His eyes flashed with an excited and crazed luster. He kept muttering the same sentence. You only deserve 3 feet, you can't ask for 10 feet, you can't ask for 10 feet. Ruthless, mad, evil, and ferocious. Why did Mo Ran become like this? At that time, it was not that he did not have the slightest suspicion, but the effects of the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower would gradually increase, and the most important point was, as it was also written in the records, that this kind of demonic flower would not produce violence out of nowhere. Instead, it would expand the host's own hatred and desires. In other words, this hatred and desire really did belong to Mo Ran. No one had implanted them into him. Mo Ran had indeed thought about slaughtering the entire Rufeng sect. He had indeed thought about becoming unrivaled in the world. He had also hated and resented Chu Wanning. However, these emotions might have only lasted for a moment, or perhaps they were just wild thoughts buried deep in his heart that even he had almost forgotten. However, the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower would dig out all the grudges in his heart and amplify them. In this way, the host of 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower might appear deranged and mad to the outsiders, but as for the host himself, his hatred would seem justified. Instead of instantly changing the host temperament, 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower slowly changed the host's personality so that other people would conclude that he slowly became like this because of hatred instead of he slowly became like this because of a spell. This is precisely why no one ever realized that there was an 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower inside Mo Ran's body. And even if it was discovered, it would most probably be when it was already in its 2nd or 3rd stage. By that time, it was already absolutely impossible to remove or contain it. After Chu Wanning finished reading this scripture, he was actually unable to come back to his senses for a long time. What kind of feeling did he have in his heart? Surprise, regret, anger, fear, or perhaps regret? He did not know. He sat on the floor of the library that was slightly dilapidated due to years of neglect. It was currently afternoon and the sun was still warm. However, when it shone on his body, it did not bring him the slightest bit of warmth. Chu Wanning sat idly in the library for a long time. He felt as if there was an invisible and untouchable person standing behind him. That person smiled faintly and sat there like a malicious spirit, spying on their every move and every word from behind the curtain. He lowered his head again and looked at the words written on the scripture. In the first stage, if discovered in time, although the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower is difficult to remove, it can be contained. In the end, the host will not lose his mind. Chu Wanning repeated the sentence over and over again, repeating it countless times. In the end, he was stunned to find that there were droplets of water dripping and slowly spreading out on the scrolls. He stretched out his cold hand and tried to wipe away the water stain. However, before his hand touched the surface of the silk, he instinctively turned to his face, covering his wet eyelashes and trembling eyelids. It was his fault, his fault. He was the one who had always been proud and reserved, the one who valued his face more than anything else. He was the one who was unwilling to speak openly and honestly about anything he wanted to say. If it was discovered in time, he would not have lost his mind. However, even after so many years, he did not notice anything. The so-called Yuhang of the night sky, the Baidu immortal, did not even realize that his disciple had become the host of an evil flower. It was because of his reservations and ineloquence that caused Mo Ran to embark on the road alone, walking into the boundless night and involving himself in a sea of blood and deep hatred. How could he have the face to have such venerable titles? How could he consider himself as Mo Ran's Shizun? If it was discovered in time. This line was like a nightmare, like a curse lingering in his ears. It felt like a thorn in his back, like a fishbone choking him to death. He was extremely shocked. He didn't deserve to be anyone's Shizun. Looking back now, how long has it been since Mo Ran started acting strangely? It wasn't just for the past 1 or 2 years ago. They had spent so many years together. Mo Ran was a gentle and brilliant young man at the beginning. Bit by bit, he was swallowed up by the darkness and got soaked in blood. And as his Shizun, it was only today, when everything was already beyond repair, that he finally realized. It was difficult to look back at things now. He hated the fact that he was in turmoil, his body felt like a floating boat, his heart breaking. He was truly unworthy of being called Shizun. That day, Chu Wanning did not know how he managed to calm his emotions nor how he slowly walked out of the library and into the empty bamboo forest at Shisheng Peak. He also did not know how he returned to the Red Lotus Pavilion and sat under the Chinese wisteria when his mind was in complete chaos. He sat there alone, from the noon till dusk. Then, a person walked into his field of vision. That person had broad shoulders and a narrow waist, and a dignified appearance. He stepped on the ground under the glow of the sunset, and in his hand was a goblet of floating light, slowly walking towards the pavilion. Chu Wanning was in a daze, and for a moment he could not determine who that man was or what year it was. That tall and handsome man overlapped with the young man in his memory. He remembered that it was a month after he became his disciple. Mo Ran carried a small clay pot wrapped in bamboo vines and excitedly ran to the Red Lotus Pavilion to find him. The youth ran too fast. His cheeks were slightly red, he was panting and his eyes were astonishingly bright. Shizun, I tasted a very good wine at the foot of the mountain. I bought a little, I'll treat you to it. Chu Wanning asked, you haven't accepted any mission yet. Where did you get the money for it? Mo Ran grinned, I borrowed it from uncle. Why waste his money? Because Shizun likes me. Mo Ran smiled, holding the wine jugs with both hands and handed it to Chu Wanning, I also like Shizun. Chu Wanning still remembered how embarrassed he was at that time. The youth's goodwill was too strong, like a hot potato that he could not hold with his bare hand. He flicked his sleeve and reprimanded, what nonsense are you talking about? Like me and what not? From now on, don't talk about this matter anymore. Oh. All right then. The youth scratched his head, but when I eat good food or drink good wine, I can't help but think of Shizun. I want to share them with Shizun. I have never drunk wine. Mo Ran smiled, then you should at least try, right? Maybe Shizun has a good tolerance. Chu Wanning pursed his lips, took the wine jug, opened it and tried to smell it. His eyes slightly widened. Does it smell good? Yes. Haha, quickly drink some and see. Chu Wanning drank a mouthful. Although it was strong, the taste was mellow and his mouth was immersed in a strong fragrance. Chu Wanning could not help but drink another mouthful. It is not bad, what is it called? Mo Ran grinned brightly, this is called Pear Blossom White. This was the first time he had drunk wine in his life. He muttered and repeated, Pear Blossom White. It is a good name. Mo Ran was very happy. If Shizun likes it, then when I start to take on assignments and start earning money, I will buy it for Shizun to drink every day. Chu Wanning drank another mouthful and looked at him with his phoenix eyes. The expression on his face was still indifferent. Then I'm afraid you won't be able to save any money. Mo Ran was all smiles, no need to save it, I will use the money I earn to buy things for Shizun, uncle and auntie. Chu Wanning did not say anything then, but a faint feeling of sweetness seeped into the gaps in his heart. He didn't want Mo Ran to think that elder Yu Hang could be bribed with wine. So, he continued to hold the wine jug nonchalantly and continued to drink indifferently. Beside him was his newly accepted little disciple, who was talking endlessly. Chu Wanning sometimes found it very surprising that his indifference was like a wall to anyone. However, this youth could happily flip over that wall and would even rub the back of his head while looking around as if nothing had happened. He was afraid that he was an idiot. On the other side, Moran was thinking about what to buy for Shizun in the future, so he asked, "Does Shizun like to eat osmanthus cake?" N. Lotus cake. N. Osmanthus jelly and lotus root. N. Moran's dimples became deeper and sweeter. He smiled. Shizun really likes sweet things. Chu Wanning did not respond anymore. He probably finally realized that sweet things did not match his usual icy demeanor. He drank another mouthful of wine. Because he was vexed, this mouthful was rather bold. Although this wine was mellow and sweet, it was still a bit strong. He choked. Helpless and ashamed, Chu Wanning felt that it was very embarrassing to choke on wine, so he forced himself not to cough. As he endured, the spiciness in his throat became more intense and the corners of his eyes and the tip of his nose couldn't help but turn a little red. The youth beside him was still talking about his grand ambitions, and his not-so-grand future. He was a bit short of breath. "Then I'll buy them all and bring them back for Shizun. In the future, I'll collect all sorts of good food from all over the world and compile its information into a book. Then I'll bring Shizun to eat all over the world, and then..." He turned around with a smile and suddenly jumped in fright. "Shizun, you... What's wrong with you?" Chu Wanning. As a master, if he choked on wine brought by his disciple, wouldn't that be the biggest joke in the world? "Hold it in. Don't cough." So the corners of his eyes turned even redder and a layer of mist even appeared in his eyes. Moran was a bit at a loss. "Did I say something wrong? Shizun, why are you crying?" Chu Wanning glared at him, his long eyelashes trembling slightly as he got a bit angry. Moran didn't sense his anger and stared blankly for a while before he seemed to understand. His tone became very gentle in an instant. "Is it because no one bought it for Shizun before?" Chu Wanning became even angrier. Moran continued, "Actually, there was a time when I didn't have anything to eat and I was about to starve to death. Then I met a kind gig on the way and he gave me some rice porridge to drink. I also like sweet things, but there was no one who could buy it for me before." This youth rather had this talent that in the end, he firmly believed that Chu Wanning's eyes were red because he was moved by his promises. He held on Chu Wanning's hand. This was truly unexpected. With Chu Wanning's upbringing, his hands were only ever held by Master Huizhui when he was young. The only other time he got to hold other people's hand was when he was teaching spells by hand. He felt very surprised that a newly accepted disciple would so rashly pull on his hand like this, disregarding the rules. He was about to get angry, but when he looked up, he got a bit surprised. That handsome young face that still had some childishness was turned to him and said earnestly, "Shizun, when I become successful, I'll buy candy for you." The youth's eyes were full of gentleness. "I'll buy you the best candy, as much as you want. My mother taught me to repay debts of gratitude after all." This young man didn't go to school properly and had been staying in a brothel for a long while. The way he talked was a bit strange and sometimes even laughable as they didn't make sense. However, Chu Wanning knew that his words this time was on mark. He stared at Moran for a moment, then suddenly lowered his eyes without saying a word. After a long time, the effect of the alcohol finally subsided. Chu Wanning coughed uncomfortably and said lightly, "Don't speak nonsense in the future. Also..." He suddenly became curious and asked, "There's something I want to ask you." "Please ask away, Shizun." Chu Wanning hesitated and finally asked a little awkwardly. "At that time, there were many masters at the front of Sky-reaching Pagoda. Why did you choose me to be your Shizun?" The young Moran opened his mouth to speak. But at this time, the memories were suddenly interrupted. Taxi and June held a wine jug and stood in front of Chu Wanning, who had been in a daze. He raised a finger and poked his forehead. "What's wrong?" Chu Wanning's eyes slowly focused at this point. He looked at Mo Ran in front of him. His face was pale and his expression was sinister. Although he was still handsome, it couldn't hide the cruelty within his pair of beast-like eagle eyes. He was no longer that passionate youth from before. It was all in the past. Chu Wanning suddenly felt very tired, very tired. He felt an extreme sense of loss and pain that he had never felt before, even after being imprisoned for so long. He was so conflicted that he didn't even know how to face the man in front of him. Chu Wanning turned his face. A slightly cold hand grabbed his chin and turned his face back. Light and shadow flowed in the phoenix-like eyes, reflecting the last trace of red in the sky. In the darkness, Taxi and June asked with a gloomy expression, "Are you still angry?" Chu Wanning closed his eyes. After a long time, he said in a hoarse voice, "No." "Has your fever subsided?" Before Chu Wanning could answer, Mo Ran let go of his chin and touched his forehead. Then he said to himself, "Yes, it has subsided." He sat down and opened the seal of the wine jar while saying, "Since your illness has been cured, your anger has also subsided. Today, accompany me to drink wine." He knew that there was an invisible mastermind behind the deterioration of Taxi and June. He knew that the seemingly peaceful Shisheng Peak was actually full of dangers. He knew that he shouldn't act rashly lest it will alert the hidden enemy. He shouldn't act any different than before. But when the wine was poured out, Mo Ran said lightly, "Pear Blossom White, your favorite wine." He felt dazed again. The scent of the wine drifted out, as if it was separated from the world, like an illusion. This was also the first wine he drank in his life. He would never forget it for as long as he lives. Chu Wanning raised his eyes and looked at the person who poured the wine. He knew that Mo Ran must have forgotten this past. Suddenly, he felt a dull pain in his heart and throat, so he picked up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. This wine was too strong. If he drank it like this, he would choke. But this time, Chu Wanning didn't hold back. He even coughed violently as if he was holding onto a piece of floating grass in a torrent. His eyes were red, his eyelashes were wet, and finally, tears flowed down. Mo Ran was slightly startled and his eyes seemed to be in a trance for a moment. However, he quickly narrowed his eyes and grinned, "What's wrong with Shizun? Why are you crying?" Chu Wanning endured. Even if it was heartbreaking, even if it was extremely torturous. The thing was, even if he now knew the truth, he couldn't do anything. He could not pull out the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower in Mo Ran's body. Or look for the mastermind behind all these. For the moment, he knew that he could only endure. He had to pretend that he didn't know anything. He had to pretend that he was angry at Mo Ran. Chu Wanning closed his eyes and tried to straighten his back. He said hoarsely, "It's the wine." Mo Ran said slowly, "Is the wine too strong?" Chu Wanning didn't answer. He filled another cup and drank it all the way, letting it burn his throat. Then he asked, "Why did you choose me to be your Shizun?" He opened his misty eyes and looked into the distance. In the evening mist, the sky-reaching pagoda was still standing solemnly. But the young man who said with a smile, "Because I like you. I think you are the gentlest," would never come back. There were 8 sufferings in life: birth, old age, sickness, death, resentment, love, separation, and the 5 yin flames: ignorance, ego, attachment, aversion, and fear of death. It was called the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower. There were so many opportunities to discover the truth, but he missed them all. When he finally learned the real reason for Mo Ran's twisted nature, he was already a cripple and couldn't do anything. That night, Chu Wanning looked at Mo Ran, who was sleeping soundly beside his pillow. That once pure face was covered with a layer of coldness, his complexion was as white as paper. He hated, he resented. When Mo Ran cut off all ties with him, he was bitterly disappointed. When Mo Ran forced him to submit to him, his heart broke. But during that long night, behind the bed curtain, lying beside Taxian Jun, Chu Wanning, who finally realized the truth, only felt that the past hatred, resentments, disappointments, and heartache were all ridiculous. Mo Ran had been under the influence of the evil spell for a long time. Everything he did were not something he intended to do at all. That all-powerful Taxian Jun had long been imprisoned and chained up by iron chains. He was his Shizun, but he couldn't do anything about it. Because he didn't know how many pairs of eyes were watching him in the shadows. He couldn't tell the truth to anyone. He couldn't even show the slightest bit of compassion and gentleness to Mo Ran. He could only show him hatred and resentment, how disheartened and heartbroken he was. Only during the dead of night in Wushan Palace, when Mo Ran was fast asleep, could Chu Wanning get up and caress Mo Ran's pale face. Only then could he gently say to him, "I'm sorry, Shizun didn't protect you well." End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 250. Mount Longxiu, Obsession. Only in the dead of night at Wushan Palace, when Mo Ran was fast asleep, could Chu Wanning get up and caress Mo Ran's pale face. Only then could he softly say, "I'm sorry, I didn't protect you well enough. I didn't protect you well enough. I allowed you to be someone else's pawn. You had become a tyrant that was reviled by thousands of people. No one in the world knows your true personality. They didn't know that you were kind, they didn't know that you were innocent, they didn't know how you became distressed because you couldn't save the earthworms in the rain, they didn't know that you would smile brightly simply because of the lotus flowers in the pond. Everyone in the world hates you for being cold-blooded and heartless, but they don't know that you once shyly scratched your head and said, I don't have much ability. If I have some spare money in the future, I'll build more houses for people like me before who don't have a place to live. Everyone hates you for killing and slaughtering, but they don't know that you once told me, Shizun, I want a holy weapon like Tianwen that can distinguish between black and white, and can also save lives. Everyone was cursing you, everyone wanted the right to kill you. I know the truth, but I can't give you back your dignity." People like Mo Ran were very sensitive to others' gazes even when they were asleep. His eyelids moved slightly, but before Chu Wanning could react, his eyes opened. "You." Their gazes met. "What are you looking at?" Chu Wanning's emotions were tense to the extreme. He didn't know how to respond, so he turned over to avoid eye contact with Mo Ran and then said, "Nothing." Mo Ran didn't say anything. After a while, a warm body hugged Chu Wanning from behind, a strong and broad chest pressed against his back. In the dark night, Chu Wanning opened his eyes. In front of him was a light breeze blowing the curtains, and behind him was the warm bosom of Taxian Jun. This man's voice sounded neither mocking or lazy as he said faintly, "You're cold and sweating." As he said this, he leaned down and sniffed the side of his neck. "Did you have a nightmare?" Mo Ran chuckled, with the leisurely tone of someone who had just woken up. "I smelled some fear." Chu Wanning did not answer, but he was indeed trembling slightly. It wasn't because he got scared, but because of the sadness and self-reproach that had almost destroyed him. He had almost exhausted all the strength in his body just to maintain this last bit of calmness. In the end, he still managed to feign ignorance in front of Mo Ran, who didn't notice anything strange about him. After a yawn, he gradually woke up. He then sniffed Chu Wanning's shoulder and hair and let out an "oh" in satisfaction. "But speaking of which, why does your body smell like flowers even when you sweat?" he said with a faint smile. "As if you're a plant cultivator." If it was any other time, such teasing would definitely provoke an extremely embarrassed and angry scolding. But on this night, Mo Ran waited for a while but did not hear any response from Chu Wanning. He was a little surprised, so he simply got up and flipped Chu Wanning's entire body over, covering him tightly again. His strong and broad figure completely enveloped the person below him. He looked at his eyes. He laid under him and seemed as if they only had eyes for each other. There was still a candle in the hall that was yet to be extinguished, and it shone through the layers of gauze curtains. In such a dim light, Moran stared at the handsome face that was close to him. It was still the same sharp eyebrows, slanted phoenix eyes, high nose bridge, and that innate prideful glint in his eyes. But for some reason, he felt that there was something unusual with him tonight. "What's wrong with you?" He reached out and touched Chu Wanning's cheek. His fingertips trembled, and the person below him suddenly closed his eyes, holding back all kinds of emotions. Moran's sleepiness completely cleared up. He felt excited. Whether it was Chu Wanning's furrowed eyebrows, his thin watery lips, or that thin and fragile face, all of these things greatly satisfied his desire to conquer. But tonight there was a vague feeling of uneasiness, so Moran controlled his temper and asked him again, "What's wrong with you?" Chu Wanning slowly opened his eyes as his half-closed eyes flashed with a light. He had nowhere to vent the pain and frustration in his heart, so finally he said in a hoarse voice, How did we get to where we are today? If I had stopped it earlier, would it have been different?" Moran didn't answer. He felt that Chu Wanning was being ridiculous. He had been defeated by him for so long, he was married, now a concubine, and had become his exclusive property. Everything was a foregone conclusion. Why would he let his imagination run wild tonight? Why would he have such thoughts again? There was no one else in Wushan Palace that night, only the naked couple on the bed. The fragrance of the flowers floating in through the window made Moran feel relaxed. He didn't want to get angry at this man who didn't know what was good for him. He was more patient with Consort Chu than he was with the Empress. So, he looked at Chu Wanning's endurance and pain with great interest. As he looked, his heart itched. It was as if a flame had been ignited. So he joked with him lazily, "If Wanning had found out earlier, how would you have stopped me?" His fingertips moved down Chu Wanning's body inch by inch. Taxian Jun's touch was passionate and languid as he teased, "With your body." Looking at the complicated emotions in Chu Wanning's eyes, Moran's eyes became moist and gloomy. After a while, he cursed in a low voice. He couldn't stand any temptation Chu Wanning presented to him, whether it was intentional or not. There wasn't much explanation, there wasn't any foreplay. Like a wild beast, he just lifted Chu Wanning's slender and firm legs and thrust in a little hurriedly. Moran's previous release was not yet cleaned up, and Chu Wanning's entrance was still loose from their previous coupling, and thus his body smoothly accepted Moran's member. When he thrusted in, he and Chu Wanning couldn't help but gasp and groan. Chu Wanning opened his misty eyes and saw Moran's broad chest and handsome face that was immersed in sexual stimulation. His beautiful and full lips were slightly parted, and he was panting because of pleasure. If the life's eight suffering were born out of lust, could it be that this broken body of his could more or less arouse Moran's passion? He didn't know. That night, he and Moran made love on that bed again and again. His mind was in a mess, and he didn't have the strength to resist as fiercely as usual. Perhaps it was because Moran was provoked by his strange behavior, or perhaps it was because Chu Wanning was not in good health. Perhaps because he had a slight fever that day that he felt Wanning was especially hot inside. Moran held him tightly in his arms. He thrusted quickly and deeply, constantly kissing Chu Wanning's lips as he grasped his waist or his ass. He lifted one of Chu Wanning's legs and thrusted into him from the side. Chu Wanning's mind was in a mess, his Adam's apple moved, and his self-control was not as good as before. Occasionally, he would even moan softly. His reaction made Moran even more excited. Between the messy pillows, Taxian Jun breathed passionately, his voice low and slow. "Is it here?" As a matter of fact, Moran was very clear about Chu Wanning's sensitive spots. After all, they had done it so many times. However, Chu Wanning's tolerance was amazing, and he rarely moaned out loud, so Moran wasn't so sure. He would change the angle or position, and every time he adjusted, he would look at Chu Wanning's frowning handsome face. How should I fuck you? Where does it feel the best? It was very messy. Everything was in chaos. Chu Wanning listened as Mo Ran kept groaning in his ears, kissing him, gasping for breath. Pain and passion intertwined like a storm. For the first time in his life, he felt like a duckweed, unable to catch anything, unable to control anything, and unable to change anything. That night, for the first time, he felt exceptionally weak. What was worse was that although he didn't answer, Mo Ran quickly discerned the angle and position that he couldn't stand the most from his trembling and expression. Thus, he passionately thrusted in that way, and every time he would push against Chu Wanning's sensitive spot, Chu Wanning could only bite his lips and endure. However, later on, Mo Ran began to move vigorously and urgently. Mo Ran ball sack collided with his ass each time, creating a smacking sound that would definitely made any outsider who heard it blush. Their hearts were beating faster than ever. A big wet patch was forming from the sticky liquids under the place where they were connected. At this time, Chu Wanning was still trying his best to hold on, but Mo Ran raised his hand to hold his chin. His lower body was still thrusting against him while his wet lips hungrily devoured his. Tears suddenly welled up in his eyes. When the kiss ended, he wanted to hold it in, but for some reasons it became impossible to do so. Under Mo Ran, he moaned softly and panted helplessly as Mo Ran deeply penetrated into him. He tried to grab onto the mattress, as if he was trying to hold onto his disintegrating pride. But it was no use. Mo Ran was too fierce and holding him too tight. His legs were trembling, as his toes curled up. He couldn't stop himself from moaning and groaning softly. Even when Mo Ran was at his most violent and forceful, he was distracted. His legs were wide open, and his toes were taut. He gasped under Mo Ran, almost losing his voice. Ah. At that time, Mo Ran's eyes were extremely dark. The louder he cried, the more he lost his composure, and drove Mo Ran fiercer and fiercer. Thus, the world turned upside down, and even the bed was about to be overturned. The beddings were all misplaced, sliding to the ground. But the two people who were making love intensely couldn't care less. This kind of coupling was very intense. That noise even made the palace servants on night duty blush when they saw Chu Wanning the next day. Their eyes were filled with an inquisitive ambiguity. He was too lost in passion and was stimulated to orgasm. The mattress was soaked, wet and sticky. Since Mo Ran had detained him and turned him into his concubine, this was the first time he was stimulated to completion without the use of aphrodisiacs. In a daze, he heard Mo Ran say in a low voice, "Do you know why we've come to this point? It's only to be expected. I've wanted to do you for a long time." Mo Ran's fingers sank into Chu Wanning's pitch-black hair. "I hate your high and mighty attitude. No matter what I do, I wouldn't be able to persuade you." Chu Wanning's eyelashes trembled slightly, almost as if they were stinging. Mo Ran was still muttering incessantly beside his hair. Obviously, he was the aggrieved one here, but the man who got the advantage was the one talking like a resentful woman. "No matter how well I do, how hard I work, you're not willing to even look at me. No. It's not like that. Once, there had been peace between you and me. There has been a pot of wine among the flowers, there has been an umbrella in the rain, a moon in the middle of autumn. But you've forgotten, and I can't bring it up now. So, you see. Only when I break your arms and legs, pull out your bones, and pull out all your claws and teeth, will you obediently lie under me." Mo Ran kissed him, his tone mad and passionate. "Only when I become the emperor can I bully you, torture you, force you, and trample on you like this." He took out his still slightly hard, pulsating cock. "To be able to see you like this now," Mo Ran said softly, "it is worth it to be sentenced to death and fall into hell. It's worth it. It's exciting enough." He stroked Chu Wanning's hair and thrusted back into his body and cummed into completion within Chu Wanning's body. From this day on, Mo Ran began to have this habit of not pulling out when he come even if he knew that Chu Wanning would be sick. His heart was filled with a scorching hot fire, his desire was boundless with beast-like ferocity. Only Chu Wanning was his water, the only one that could contain him, the person that he wanted to tear apart as much as he wanted to furiously kiss him. As for Chu Wanning, after the initial pain, he began to slowly sink down. He slowly began to organize all the known clues by himself, thinking about the person behind the scenes who planted the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower and what was their goal in doing so. Although the records said that by the 3rd stage, 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower would be impossible to pull out, Chu Wanning was still unwilling to give up. He had always been adamant in refusing to admit defeat. He wasn't one to simply accept fate. Just like that, day after day passed. Without spiritual energy, Chu Wanning would have to suffer a lot of hardship, not to mention the fact that he couldn't let a second person know about it. It was difficult to look for the person behind the scenes, and it was even more impossible to pull out the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower. However, the purpose for controlling Mo Ran was becoming more and more obvious. This was because Mo Ran began to practice the gate of time and space, life and death. I won't practice the art of rebirth. He still remembered that day when Mo Ran stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back and looked at the chirping orioles outside. He said lightly, according to the records, only people with abundant yin energy would be able to master it. As he said that, he turned around and looked at Chu Wanning. I plan to practice the foremost forbidden technique. The gate of time and space, life and death. What else could it be? You can't learn it. Mo Ran smiled, one has to try it before one could admit defeat. I haven't done anything yet and you're already saying that it's impossible. Chu Wanning shook his head, the foremost forbidden technique goes against the heavens and changes fate, tearing apart 2 different worlds. It's something that the heaven forbids. Before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted. Mo Ran's expression was very lazy, so what if the heaven forbid it? Why should that stop me? In this life, the thing that I don't believe in the most is heaven and fate. He then started to put it into practice. Records about the foremost forbidden technique had been lost for a long time. Mo Ran was the emperor and though it was difficult, he managed to obtain ancient scroll regarding the technique. However, a crucial part of the technique was missing. Without the complete secret manual, no matter how strong Mo Ran's spiritual power was, he could only form the door to space and he couldn't really open a door for time and space. It was from then on that Chu Wanning began to understand the intentions of the person who planted the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower on Mo Ran. It was definitely not to dominate the world. He guessed that the person's ultimate goal was to open the gate to time and space, life and death. Furthermore, it wasn't just a rift but most likely, that person's goal was a complete merging of 2 worlds. Only a very small number of people, such as Mo Ran, who was born with strong and tyrannical spiritual energy, could achieve this. End chapter.